Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, they're among the world's top universities, but it seems Oxford and Cambridge are still largely reserved for the privileged elite. A new report out tomorrow is expected to condemn their failure to award more places to students from state schools. The Social Mobility and Child Poverty Commission will name and shame the colleges which admit most private school pupils.
It's the vista which has inspired Britain's elite for generations. But only a fraction of state school pupils reach the lofty heights of Oxbridge. Tomorrow, the Social Mobility Commission is expected to show that while 7% of British children go to fee-paying private schools, they make up 39% of Cambridge undergraduates and 43% of Oxford's.
I wouldn't have had the confidence to even go there. I'd never even seen a building like some of the college buildings there.
Oxford graduate Damien Shannon grew up on a Mansfield council estate. He says it didn't occur to him to apply until postgraduate level.
I'd never spoken to an academic. The only educated people I would have come into contact with would have been the teachers in my school, who it was just not on their radar that I should go, and even if it was, I don't think they would have been terribly well prepared to advise me. There were no graduates in my family. My mother had no qualifications. She had no experience of those things with which to guide me. So there was nothing that would have raised it as even a possibility in my mind.
One challenge for admissions teams is that students from fee-paying schools generally get better grades. But the report is tipped to force Oxbridge to make greater allowances to attract students from state schools.
Well, with me now are Lorna Finlayson, a lecturer in philosophy at the University of Essex and former junior research fellow at King's College, Cambridge, and Linton Lees, who founded Oxford First Generation Students, a group aimed at helping students who are in the first in their family to go to university. Lorna first, I mean, the figures are pretty damning, aren't they? What more do you think that Oxbridge should be doing?
Well, I mean, I had an idea that I floated in a Guardian article about a year ago, which I should say was a kind of a provocation piece, but that also doesn't mean that it was a joke. So what I mean by that is that if it were up to me, then yeah, I would actually do this idea. And the idea is, you basically just say, for one or a couple of colleges, same as you do with women, OK, we're not going to take any more private school students in this college. And that was a very simple and very effective way to try and redress the balance.
And quite controversial. I mean, aren't you worried that that might create a sort of ghetto of state school students, and that's bad for both state and private school pupils?
Well, it was strange. A lot of people said that, and I was kind of surprised by that because as you just said, we're talking about 93% of the school population here. You're not really talking about a ghetto. You're talking about a massive majority. So it's not as if there wouldn't be a lot of internal variation within a college like that. It's also not as if there wouldn't be, you know, another 25 or so other colleges which did admit students from all kinds of school. So I find that worry kind of overblown. But as I say, it was a provocation piece in the sense that I never thought it was actually going to happen. No one is going to make me head of an Oxbridge college. So what I was really trying to expose was a kind of hypocrisy in that a lot of academics in Oxbridge talk about how much they care about access, and yet actually if they wanted to really do something about it, they'd have to do something much more radical than what they're prepared to do.
Well, it is an interesting idea, isn't it? What do you make of it, Linton?
I mean, I think big changes need to be made, but I personally feel that making changes at Oxbridge is too late, and it's focusing very narrowly on two universities when actually there are other universities, other elite universities with similar statistics that don't have the same focus on them, the same media scrutiny. I also, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking that Oxbridge, and I mean your college in particular, Christchurch, is one of the worst offenders. I mean, Christchurch, if you look at the figures, more than half undergraduates there are from private schools, aren't they? And
I mean, and part of the worry that when we saw Christchurch's name come up in the papers again is that actually a lot of the enormously important access work that we do at Christchurch, you know, we're aware we have a reputation, we know we have a problem. And so the amount of money, time and effort, you know, volunteers, student volunteers, we do tours, we go into schools every week, trying to talk about this, trying to encourage, you know, state school pupils from disadvantaged backgrounds to make the leap and apply, as many of us have done and are pleased that we have as well.
So you're worried that naming and shaming might actually be counterproductive?
Absolutely, and I also think, you know, ultimately, Oxford or Cambridge can make as many changes as possible, but while the education system in this country, long before that, you know, remains so unequal, Oxford and Cambridge could invest as much as they like in access, but actually, ultimately, it's not going to have enough of an impact, you know.
Well, that's an interesting point, isn't it? I mean, how much of this is Oxbridge's fault and how much is it the fault of the state schools for not giving a better education?
I don't think it's the fault of teachers in the state system. I think they're under enough pressure already. They're facing squeezes on their pay. They're facing ever-increasing pressures. So I certainly don't want to pass the buck and blame teachers. I do agree, though, that Oxbridge is only one. It's two universities. That really we have a kind of the establishment in this country has a fixation with Oxbridge. It's not just about them. So what I would say is I completely agree with that it's not the whole story. If, however, you were looking at it from a point of view of someone working in Oxbridge, say you were the provost or the president or the principal of a college, and you wanted to make things better, then there are things you could do.
Well, if the private schools' pupils are getting so much better grades, there is a limit to what the universities could do, isn't it?
Well, I mean, this has changed a lot in the last few years. When I started in 2004 at Cambridge, there was much more leeway for academics to make a decision about taking a chance on somebody. And since then, there's been this pressure to kind of tighten up the requirements. And that is inevitably going to have the effect of narrowing access. It has a detrimental effect on access. So I think that's something that academics should actually resist.
Do you support using contextual data, so data about a student's background, to make it sort of skew the pitch in favour of a state school?
I absolutely do, but what I worry about is actually that if we're working with this binary, as the media tends to, actually I don't think Oxford and Cambridge are working with so much of state and private. I think some of the problems with Lorna's idea of having the state-only colleges is actually, it's not as simple as that. We have fantastic state grammars in this country, which resemble private schools in everything else, but they don't charge fees. We also have, you know, half of the students at Oxbridge who would have received free school meals when they were at school were on scholarships to private schools, so block their entry to Oxford because they're down as privately educated actually doesn't solve the problem.
And have you always felt at home at Christ Church, or has that been tough?
It's been difficult. It's definitely, students like me who are the first in their family to go to university are by no means a majority, and that's been difficult and challenging at times. But I would not say that those challenges have ever been a reason to tell another first-generation student or a student from state school not to apply.
Linton Lees, Lorna Finlayson, thank you very much for joining me. That's great.
I've been getting